if you're drinking hard liquor every time you appear on a live stream, which is the case for every appearance that I remember of Richard Spencer on a live stream, and you're leading a dissident, heavily persecuted movement, that is just so incredibly destructive. It's just such poor decision making. It is so out of touch with reality. I don't agree with much that the late Harold Covington said, but his one edict that we should not, that the dissidents should not engage in drugs or alcohol until the revolution comes, seems to me like pretty wise counsel when you see the drunken antics of a Richard Spencer. I think that the alt-right would have been better served to follow someone like Jesus, who said, "Be as wise as serpents and as gentle as doves." So in the first 300 years after Jesus, were Christians going around saying, "We rule the Roman Empire"? When the Romans look up in the sky, they see faces like ours looking down at them. Were they walking around drunk and taunting their opponents? No, they were engaged in the very opposite, and that's what you should do when you're a tiny dissident movement and your opponents have 10,000 times as much power as you do. Here is one distinguishing test between useful thinkers on the dissident right and crazed thinkers on the dissident right. If you believe that there is one magic key to unlock how the world works, you're crazy. It's juvenile, whether it's you think it's Jewish perfidy or the Pope or some secret movement. If you think there's one magic key that unlocks reality, that unlocks history, you're crazy. There's no magic key. Pass.
No, look at my picture. There's nothing.
I was going to say that Luke talking about there being no magic key is absolutely correct. This is what, among other things, is so tragic about the Jew-obsessed. Paul's using the words alt-right before talking about John Derbyshire and even himself and Ramsey Paul. That, the alt-right was a big enough thing that could include people who were libertarians, people who were like Mike Cernovich, up until November of 2016. Today, Ramsey Paul disassociated himself from the alt-right. I think in November of 2016, actually, Paul himself, he never formally affiliated with it. He just sort of looped in, I think. So today, the alt-right, as I was mentioning earlier here, it does not exist in any concrete sense. What we're dealing with now are sort of like the ashen remnants of what was once a broad church, so to speak, in American politics. These ashes are what have really gone down this rabbit hole of anti-Semitic conspiracy theorism. And by the way, it is worth addressing what is anti-Semitism. By my standard, anti-Semitism is meant dislike of Jews on an ancestral or ethnic basis. People often take anti-Jewish sentiment, meaning anti-religious Jewish sentiment, and include that with anti-Semitism. Today, I think that's been done to such an extent that anti-Semitism includes that as well. So when I use the word anti-Semitism here, I'm referring to this sort of combination definition. I do apologize, I guess, for not stating that earlier in the program, but there it is. So yeah, the conspiracy theorism among these people is interesting, and of course, the mainstream conservative perspective, which of course is dominated by Conservatism Inc., doesn't help matters because it treats any criticism like of Israel as, a dislike of Jews on a group basis. And that plays into the hands of the, real anti-Semites on the remnant of the alt-right. And these people are able to say, well, Conservatism Inc.'s not letting you address this at all, but look, our group addresses this, that, the other thing. And that seduces a lot of people to going over toward this dissident group, which is leading people nowhere for reasons which both Paul and Luke have articulated brilliantly here tonight. So it's very interesting indeed. But I do stand by my earlier statement that a lot of the, present day alt-rightists, to the extent you could call them, to the extent you could say there's an alt-right at all, I always have to add that qualifier. A lot of these guys, I think, really would be burning rooms if not for the modern left's obvious distaste for white male interests. I think they look for environmental answers to all their problems. There's not much introspection there. They want the world to be fair in a way that they describe, and you saw that with Spencer's, reaction that Luke was mentioning before. These guys really are just they're people who look to blame others for their problems, and Jews are just a scapegoat.
You see a mirror image of this among Jews, not nearly as self-destructive, but very common talking point in both the Jewish tradition and among many rabbis and Jewish leaders is that anti-Semitism is purely an irrational mental illness on the part of non-Jews. They completely dismiss the idea that there is anything that Jews do that causes non-Jews to dislike them. And that is absolutely insane. But one of the functions of in-group dynamics is that you never lose popularity, power, or money by telling people what they want to hear. So just like Jews want to hear that all anti-Jewish sentiments derive from irrationality, so too many on the alt-right want to hear that all their problems derive from the Jews. And among many parts of the Arab and Muslim world, also the teachings that all their problems come from Jews or Christians is a very popular thing to say. So it's not popular to tell your group or to tell an individual that he or they are responsible for their own problems. Pass.
I would say that there are two types of criticisms of Jews, one of which seems to me entirely justified, and the other I find extremely stupid and annoying. One is the recognition that Jews are disproportionately present in culturally and socially subversive, destructive movements, which are aimed obviously at destroying Judeo-Christian civilization, including the Jewish elements, which are seen as somehow tainted by the fact that Christians or evangelicals support them.